أعوذ بالله من الشيطان اللعين الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الصلاة والسلام على سيدنا محمد رسول الله صلى الله عليه وآله وسلم وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي السلام عليكم. Yesterday we spoke about Hazrat Muslim Ali bin Aqil alayhi salam and his sacrifice, his martyrdom in Kufa. Now we progress onward to where Imam al-Hussein's caravan is now nearly at Kufa, and they have not received news of the martyrdom of Muslim bin Aqil. Ubaydullah, when he found out that Imam al-Hussein was on his way to Kufa, he started preparing an army. And at the leadership of that army, that contingent he was going to send out to stop Imam al-Hussein, he put in command who would be known shortly in the future as the repentant general, Hurr ibn Yazid Ar-Riyahi. So, before we begin, we will just quickly analyze who Hurr alayhi salam really was. Hurr was the leader of a tribe in the city of Kufa. He was a famous warrior, a champion of the Kufans. Now, when Ubaydullah took control and martyred Muslim bin Aqil alayhi salam, he made Hurr the commander of a cavalry company with more than 1,000 soldiers and gave him an order to bring Imam al-Hussein to Kufa, to Ubaydullah's palace. Either that or stop them from going to Kufa. It is narrated from Hurr himself that when he left the palace of Ibn Ziyad and began riding out of Kufa, he heard a call from behind him that repeated 3 times, Ya al-Hurr, O al-Hurr, glad tidings for paradise be for you. Al-Hurr said that he looked back, but he couldn't see anyone and thought, by God, this is not a glad tiding. How can it be glad tidings while I am on my way to war with Al-Hussein ibn Ali alayhi salam? This shows you that Al-Hurr was already a sympathizer with the Ahlul Bayt. He knew that the people he was serving presently were evil, that he was doing evil, that what he was doing was not the way of the Sharia, was not what Rasulullah himself would have wanted. This shook him to his core, but it couldn't stop him from carrying out his orders. When he finally intercepted Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam's caravan, his horses and his men were dying from thirst. Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam ordered that his caravan's water supply be opened to Hurr's soldiers, and he watered the horses of Hurr's cavalry company and let his men drink as much water as they wanted. Hurr then asked the Imam alayhi salam to allow him and his men to pray the noon prayer behind him, and the Imam accepted. Hurr was now more shaken than ever. He saw the eloquence, the generosity of Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam, and he couldn't bring himself to execute the orders he was given. He couldn't bring Imam al-Hussein to Kufa. If it was anybody else that Ubaydullah had sent, any other Yazidi, any other cruel person as cruel as Ubaydullah, they would have forced Imam Hussein, even ambushed him right then and there, and brought him to Kufa. But Hurr did not do that. Hurr asked the Imam, please accompany me to Kufa. Ubaydullah would like to see you. The Imam refused. The Imam then asked, allow us to return to Medina. Hurr refused. Hurr then came up with an accord. Since you would not like to go to Kufa, and we would not like you to go to Medina, then let us choose a middle path. That way I can write back to Ibn Ziyad without saying that I failed my mission. And so Imam al-Hussein began heading north, neither towards Kufa nor towards Medina, with Hurr falling behind Imam Hussein's caravan. They eventually reached the desert plains of Karbala when the accord that Hurr set with Imam al-Hussain alayhi salam expired. And Ibn Ziyad sent out a letter to Hurr telling him that you must now stop the Imam over here in the place where no trees and no plants grow. I will send a scout to make sure that you complete your order. End. Now, Hurr, along the whole route to Karbala, was trying to dissuade the Imam from doing it. He feared the violent outcome of a war with Imam Hussain. He did not want to go to war with the grandson of Rasulullah, and he knew that what he was doing, was wrong. So whenever he got the chance, or whenever the situation sufficed, Al-Hurr alayhi salam would ask Imam Hussain, "By God, please save your sacred soul, for I am sure if a war takes place, you will be killed." Imam Hussain would reply to this by reciting a poem or saying that he is not afraid of martyrdom in the way of God. Now, the letter that Ziyad sent tied Hurr's hands together, hypothetically, of course. That now Hurr was being spied upon by Ziyad's scout. He could not afford to not execute his orders. He went to Imam al-Hussain and told him that he had to camp at Karbala. Imam Hussain asked, "Can I set up my camp in the nearby oasis village of Nanawa?" Hurr refused, as he could not say anything else under the watchful eye of the spy. As such, Imam al-Hussain set up his camp on the barren lands of Karbala on the banks of the river Euphrates. It's now the day of Ashura. Hurr went to Umr ibn Sa'ad and asked, "Do you really want to fight this man, Imam al-Hussain alayhi salam?" Umar replied, "Yes, by God, I will start a war, the lightest part of which is dropping heads and chopping hands." God curse Umar ibn Sa'ad. Hurr asked, "Weren't his suggestions good enough for you?" Umar ibn Sa'ad replied, had it been up to me, I would have accepted. Yet the commander Ibn Ziyad did not accept. Hurr pleaded with the leadership of the Kufan and Yazidi army to accept the suggestions of Imam Hussain, which would have averted open warfare, but none of them accepted. Hurr then moved away, pretending to examine his army, as he was a commander of one of the flanks of the Yazidi army. He rode further and further to the edge of the Yazidi camp, at which point he reached an old friend of his, who asked him, "By God, I have never seen you in any war like this. If I was asked who is the bravest man of Kufa, certainly I wouldn't miss your name. Now what is the state I see you in?" Hurr then replied with a famous saying of his, "Truly I see myself between paradise and hellfire, and by God, if I get torn apart and burned, I will never choose anything but paradise." After saying this, Hurr broke ranks and ran for Imam Hussein's camp, rode for it. When he arrived, Imam Hussain was standing there, waiting to welcome his guest. Hurr alayhi salam dismounted, fell to his knees, and started begging the Imam for forgiveness. The Imam gently pulled Hurr to his feet and embraced him as a brother would embrace another brother, and said, "Hurr, you are a free man in this world and in paradise, and you are forgiven by me, by my father Ali alayhi salam, and by my grandfather Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam." Hurr, now completely forgiven, now a defender of Imam Hussain, asked the Imam if he could be the first to go into the battlefield and die in the name of Imam Hussain, as he had been the first to raise swords against him. And Imam Hussain accepted. Al-Hurr rode out onto the battlefield and gave a speech to the people of Kufa and the Yazidi soldiers. "O people of Kufa, may your mother grieve over you. Did you summon this good man to yourselves and said you would help him fight his enemies? Now he has come to you. You refrained from helping him and have lined up against him and want to kill him? You have grabbed his soul, won't let him breathe, surrounded him from every angle, prevented him from going to the vast cities and lands of God in such a way that he is like a captive in your hands. He cannot do anything positive for himself nor protect himself from harms. And you have prevented him and his family and children from drinking the water of the Euphrates, from which Jews and Christians and mages drink, and in which black pigs and dogs swim, to the point that he has lost his energy due to thirst. How badly you observe and respect the right of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam and his progeny. May God not quench your thirst on the day of judgment. So what he basically said here was, who do you think you are to block the path of Imam al-Hussain alayhi salam? Who do you think you are to disrespect the right of the progeny of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam? Who do you think you are to block the water to the children of the Ahlul Bayt? I, Hurr, have found the new way, the proper way. I have found that I have to support the Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam. And you must join me if you too wish to avoid the hellfire, as this man has quenched your thirst, has given you water, has given you numerous chances to redeem yourselves and to support him, yet you keep fighting him. This man came with good intentions to help you against Ubaydullah, and you betrayed him and now stand against him on the field of battle. Hurr then drew his sword and charged into the Yazidi army. The whole time he recited this rajaz, his poetic war cry. I am Hurr, a host to the guest. I strike your necks with a swift sword in defense of the one who has alighted on the ground of Khif in Mina, while I do not regret over it. Hurr fought bravely, and many of his former soldiers in his battalion had said when he had denounced the army that they would kill Hurr, and yet many of them fell to the ground slain by his sword. Hurr alayhi salam tore into the Yazidi ranks. Umr ibn Sa'ad started panicking. How could one of his own do so much damage? Umar then commanded his soldiers, attack Hurr with everyone, disrespect the right to single combat, kill Hurr. The three flanks of the army closed in on the one lone horseman. Hurr fought bravely, and it is reported that he killed more than 40 Yazidi soldiers with his blade, but Hurr was shortly swarmed by infantry. He was hit over the head with the sword and brought down to the ground. A single cry ran out, "O Imam, accept my final salam." Imam al-Hussain alayhi salam ran into the battlefield, scaring away the Yazidi forces who had continued to mutilate the body of Hurr. Imam al-Hussain reached the body and retrieved it and returned it to his camp. He laid it down on the barren, dry sands of Karbala and wiped the blood from Hurr's face and said, "You are truly Hurr, a free man, like the way your mother has named you. You're a free man both in this world and in the hereafter." He then tied a piece of cloth over Hurr's head, which had been so badly injured that it kept bleeding. It is reported that years after the Battle of Ashura, a king dug up Hurr's grave and found his body in perfect condition, with wounds still fresh. He had found out that the cloth tied around Hurr's head was a cloth from Imam Hussain, and when he removed it, the wound bled as if it was made just then. He tried tying off the wound with another cloth, but the wound kept bleeding mass amounts of blood. He put the cloth that Imam Hussain had tied back on Hurr's head, and the wound stopped bleeding. Hurr, you came to defend Imam al-Hussain before that one cry over the battlefield of Karbala on Ashura, "Hal min nasir yansuruna?" You came to help the Imam. Who would help him when there was no one left? Assalamu ala Hurr ibn Yazid Ar-Riyahi alayhi salam. Inna lillah wa inna ilayhi raji'un.